Chapter 1, Farewell to Fear, dedicated to my champion, my father, Melvin Jones. Thanks for joining me. Look, I don't think it's possible to get into building a business or talking about a career without first looking inward. What I tend to believe is that if we're honest with ourselves, if we take out the highlight reel that we see every day, a lot of who we are begins with the opinions we think are important. For me, there's not enough time to unpack everything, so here's the Cliff Notes version. What I can tell you is, like some of you, I had excellent parents in Melvin and Joyce Jones, who had the highest opinion of me. I mean, seriously, I'm named after my dad, and many growing up would refer to me as Little Joyce. Positive affirmations were frequent at home. I got the I love yous, the hugs, the you're beautiful and smart. But because of the opinions of others outside of that secure home, I never truly felt whole. My hair didn't blow in the wind, no matter how many times I tried to fix it with Jerry Curl products. As a teenager, my lips became the subject of too many inappropriate sexual references. And I would hide my curves in oversized outfits because I wanted to be physically invisible. So I thought, I don't have a chance at being Miss Pretty, and so I created a professional character called Miss Competent. My version of Miss Competent looked like the stereotypical ice queen. A dear friend of mine will remember that someone once said I was as soft as a Brillo pad. And while I laughed it off, later that evening I cried, and I found myself overeating in a parking lot at McDonald's at midnight. If anyone knew me early in my professional career, they would tell you that I yo-yoed between a size 10 to 22. Yes, I'm a recovering emotional eater. I wore wigs, which I believe at the time I said was due to hair loss, but the bigger truth, the secret truth, was I was pulling it out due to anxiety. And I rarely let anyone come to my early apartments because I was ashamed of where I lived. You see, fear and other people's opinions, perceptions, projections of me became the director of my life, and I was exhausted. What I've discovered is that there are actually two truths when dealing with fear. First, fear freezes your growth. It's true. I couldn't establish genuine relationships, even friendships, for years because guess what? Eventually people see you. They figure out your lies, and they're no longer interested in jumping through hoops to establish a friendship. I spent a lot of years very lonely. And second, fear fogs up your vision. When you live in fear or with fear, it clouds your ability to see any situation clearly. Fear told me I couldn't be physically attractive and respected. Fear told me that in order to be professionally secure, I had to be a workaholic, but left out the part of a recession and business just being business. And the biggest lie is that fear told me that living with fear was the only option. So how can we transform fear? Well, first, we have to confront it. In my experience, combating fear can be overwhelming, and admitting to yourself that you even have fears is humbling because it removes the mask that so many of us try to wear daily, that we have it all together, when in reality, we are all just doing the best we can. So for today's exercise, I invite you to write down your top 3 to 5 fears on one side of your paper. And then next to it, write down the worst possible outcome. And here are just a couple of examples from my own life. I was afraid to embrace softness. For me, I imagined that the worst possible outcome was that softness paired with my unique tone of voice, I wouldn't be taken seriously professionally. I was fearful about being seen as beautiful because I've lived through sexual trauma, and I imagined that it would continue. I was afraid to show people where I lived because I imagined that once I gave people access to my home, they would immediately decide I wasn't on their level and would want nothing to do with me. Now, you may be saying, how does writing down my fears help me? Well, from my perspective, I believe that unless we acknowledge our fears by ourselves and for ourselves, there is no opportunity to reconcile them. Without this acknowledgement, I have found that what tends to happen is that we allow other people, usually people who have not resolved their own stuff, or people who should not be given access to our inner vulnerabilities, to tell us what we should be afraid of, or worse, what we can and cannot do. As an example, some have said to me, I shouldn't talk about my history of sexual trauma for the fear that I would never find anyone. And others, including some of my teachers early in my life, encouraged me to change my voice for fear I would not have access to a vibrant career. I believe that once you see your fear with the worst possible outcome, you have ownership over it. And once you have ownership over it, the weight and power of fear begins to gradually diminish. Simply put, there is no managing fear with avoidance. Also, by keeping it in your journal, when you look back at your private fear narratives, you have a beautiful story of you. And what you will find is that the worst possible outcome almost always never happens. Rather, life tends to surprise you. As an example, I never took my former teacher's bad advice to get vocal coaching, so my voice has never changed. And to be clear, I'm so okay with that. And yet, because of my skills, my work ethic, my consistency, people do take me very seriously, and I have an in-demand business. More recently, in 2018, I confronted my fear of being newly single and unexpectedly being infertile. Ironically, the following year, I met my husband and am blessed to be a mentor to many. Fears can't be conquered until they are faced. And if you want to begin to build a life on your terms, you need to say hello and eventually farewell to your fears. I believe when you answer the question, if you showed up in the world as you truly are, what do you really have to be afraid of? Then you've established the foundation. Life will open up for you in different ways. And now, the real fun can begin. Till the next moment, see you soon.